And welcome back to Creative Thinkers. My name is Miguel Valenzuela, and as always, we bring you a special guest. I met this person about 6 months ago. So interesting, I just had to interview her. So today we bring you Lorena Verduzco, and she is an entrepreneur. We're going to learn a lot about her. Lorena, welcome.
Thank you, Miguel. Nice to be here.
So I'm really excited to talk to you because the conversations that we've had have been so interesting that I feel that everybody needs to learn a little bit about your story because it's so deep and intricate.
It's different.
Yeah, it really is different. So you're not from El Paso originally. You're actually from a very small community, right? Where is that?
That is right. I'm from Nuevo Casas Grandes, Chihuahua, a Mormon colony called Colonia Dublan, and which was established more than 100 years ago. So I have that little Anglo influence, as long as of course, my Mexican culture. And yeah, about 3.5 hours south in the state of Chihuahua.
Very good. But you actually, your story coming to El Paso is also very interesting. But before we get to that, I want to talk about how you grew up. One of the things that a lot of individuals have that is interesting is literally what kinds of things were happening while they were maturing as individuals. Can you take us through a little bit of a story there?
Sure. Yes. I went through my elementary education and in the Mormon system, which is
how is it different?
It's very different from where I was from my hometown. Of course, it was the Mexican public system. It's very different because I had 4 hours in English, which included all the subjects, and then I had 4 hours in Spanish.
Oh wow! So it was like dual language all the time.
It was dual. Yes, okay. It was dual, and it was very different actually from the public system. So I did my elementary there in the Mormon system, along with 1 year, which I would think it would be freshman year. And then after that, I did my high school and middle school and 1 year of high school in the Mexican public system. So that was kind of like a learning experience because I was in a private school in elementary, and then I switched to the public system, and it was
kind of
a little cultural shock there. Yeah, the first one. Yeah.
The first one, meaning that you've been through a lot of things.
Yes.
So one of the things that we focus on is creativity, but we also need to get a better understanding of how you got to this kind of creative thinking process, because you actually did a lot of things. Your education was limited, I would say, to a certain degree, and then all of a sudden you were educating yourself. Take us through that process of educating yourself.
Well, yes, my academic education was limited, per se. And then I had to get creative because at the age of 18, I was already divorced. I'm going to skip a little bit because
No, go right ahead. Just kind of take us through the process.
Yeah, I was already divorced and back at my parents' house with a baby girl, and I needed income. I needed income. So the only skill that I could resource was my basic English. And then I had the idea of starting to just, I asked for a barred classroom in a school, and I started teaching dentists and doctors English. So I had to, get my little grammar book again and start, kind of refreshing my vocabulary or increasing it. Rather, and that's how I began. And then from there, of course, it was a very, very limited income. And from there, I started, getting ideas, and I pursued the high school and middle school teaching in the public system, Mexican public system, as an ESL instructor.
Oh wow! So you were very specific, right? Focused on what you were doing.
That was my skill. It was very limited, but that's where I tapped into. And then I was very happy doing that, and all of a sudden, I was homeless.
Really? Okay. So
Yes.
how did that happen? And you don't have to give us details, but how did that also kind of help you propel
Yes.
you to what you're doing today?
Okay,
Because it must have been a huge shock as well, right?
oh my goodness,
Yeah.
a very huge shock. I was raised in a very sheltered home, very sheltered family, conservative. My mother was a strict Catholic. My dad was kind of a little liberal, free spirit, and I think that's where I get it from.
Which is
I
good.
really do.
Which is good,
Which
yeah.
turned out to be okay, but not back then,
Right.
especially since I was a female. Right?
Okay.
And so one day, out of the blue, I was homeless, and I was around 20 years old, I believe. It was a good thing that I already had my car, a little
Right.
$300 car.
Which you bought, I would assume, through your education.
Through my little, savings
Yeah,
and stuff like that. Back then, I thought it was a lot of money.
Right.
Because I paid it cash, may I add.
Wow, wow.
And so that was my home for around, I believe, like a month.
Okay.
Yeah, that's that. But it really felt like an eternity.
I can imagine.
Oh my goodness, yes. From there, I had my job in the in the educational system, and I went. I rented out an apartment. I had no furniture, and I started acquiring a little bit here, a little bit there. But that event right there in my life, I think, is one of my greatest learning experiences. I can tell you that.
How do you think that it helped? Because I think that when you go through shocks, I lost my wife 14 years ago, and that was a huge shock. It taught me that, through the grace of God and the abilities that I have and believing in myself, I could achieve the things that I did. And, everything has been great, thank God. But it was because of that initial shock that I learned that I could take these steps. How did that specific event help you become what you do today? Become the person that you are today?
Okay, it helped me. I believe it helped me because what I experienced was something that I never want to go back to, and that taught me that I needed to be. I was very determined to get myself to succeed or at least pursue a goal that would take me to better myself in many aspects.
Which I think you have achieved, because one of the things that you said is that you eventually got remarried, you end up here in El Paso, you do a lot of things, you're a mother and you kind of live life, and then all of a sudden another event happens to you.
Another life event happens.
Yeah, another life event. You are asked by your daughter a very specific question. What was that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so my boys were already teenagers. My daughter was in law school already, and she had a friend who was going on vacation, and she was an ESL instructor at a trade school here in El Paso. And she told me that she was looking for a substitute if I knew anybody. And I said, well, I sure do.
Who was that person?
Myself.
So you already had a little bit of the understanding of what it was to teach ESL to a certain degree, but you said, I'm going to take this on. And then how did that turn out, actually?
Yeah. So, well, long story short, I was covering for her, and I really liked it, because I wanted to feel that I was working outside the home, and kind of it was a nice thing. At that point, I did it because more like a hobby at that point in my life, right there. But I enjoyed it, and I wanted to. I wanted to better myself. I've always liked learning, always. And I started with my grammar and books, and learning more about English, more vocabulary, more writing skills, a little bit here, a little bit there, because I wanted to give my best. So from there, I started to It was a trade school where the displaced workers from NAFTA.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if
So
you
we're
remember.
talking 30 years ago, 20 years
No,
ago?
we're talking. This was about 2000, in the year
20
2000.
years ago,
yeah.
okay.
And there was a lot of displaced workers, and the state gave them funds so they could do like a small career.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's what the school was about. And I started, researching and looking into the business. And
Which you had never done before?
Oh, no.
Right, right.
And long story short, I started my own school. And back then, I was married.
Mm-hmm.
I was married.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband always was, he was the typical Mexican husband, very responsible. Well, the typical in the good sense,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Very responsible. And he told me, why do you want to work? Why do you want to get yourself into a business? And I said, well, I want to do it,
Right.
I saw an opportunity there.
Right.
And he said, no, you can, I don't think so. So I said, okay, so now I have to ask my dad. And I asked my dad, Dad, I want to start this kind of school. And my dad, he kind of brushed me off because he didn't, I was asking for $10,000 to start, right? And he said, well, we'll talk about it later. And in my household, in our family, when you say we'll talk about it later,
That means it's
a very
done deal.
polite no.
Right.
And I didn't want to ask again, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I did, I tapped into the credit cards.
Okay.
And I started the school with a credit card.
Wow.
And yes, and I was, the cleaning lady was Lorena, the ESL instructor was Lorena.
Oh, really?
Yes, the advertisement, Lorena. So I got kind of creative again.
Yeah. Which
Yes.
goes back to what we
Yes,
talk about
and
on
yeah.
this show. Is the whole premise of the show is to have a better understanding what creativity is and what
That's
it
right.
really does for us, right?
right.
And I feel like the stories that you're telling us right now really focus on how thinking outside the box got you to where you were able to create this business, right? And it's not the only business that you've created, but let's stick with this one for a moment. So one of the stories that you told me I found very compelling, the fact that one of the, I guess, aspects or requirements from the state for you to actually have a school was to have computers, right? And I just loved what you said how you created this computer room.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Okay, so in order for the Texas Workers Commission to approve a career school, they had to send inspectors, and of course we would submit curriculums and syllabuses and all that. So we had 3 different areas. We had the GED area, we had the ESL area, and we had the computer lab. And the inspector was going to be coming in town. He was coming from Austin, and we had to have a computer lab, and we had one computer which was in the office.
That's not a lab.
No, that's not a lab. So I said, okay, wait a minute. My credit card is not. We can't do this right now.
Right.
But we actually had 2 computers. And so what happened is I went into one of those auction places where there were about 20 computers, and I bought them for $250.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I bought 15 actually.
Okay.
And
that's enough for a computer
that
lab.
was enough for my big computer room. It was nice. I had already painted it and stuff like that. So we got some tables and everything. And sure enough, the inspector came and he said, check. And then we went to the, every different area. So check. And
so you now had a school.
I now had an approved school. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yes, and now it was time to get the program for the ESL. And I was the ESL instructor. So I got creative again.
How did you do that?
And I got the grammar book, and I got a bunch of books which I had already researched. And from my experience, from what I thought that had worked, I started making, from level 1, level 2, 3, 4, and 6. And
So you created your own curriculum as well?
Yes, wow. Exactly. And that was submitted to, again, right, to Austin. And they sent somebody over here, and they needed to see a classroom, right? And they needed to see a class. So I did the class, and well, it again, check. So we were off to a very good start. And then we started with 2 private students, because you have to start with students, and then you get accredited.
Then you're able to enroll
Then you're able
other students.
to apply, yes. And we started with 2 private students, and then we subsequently we enrolled 149 state contracts.
That blows me away.
Yeah.
Starting from something that you didn't know about, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, you had very, very little understanding of it, and then on a whim somebody says, hey, you know what, can you substitute? And then you go on to own your own business as, I guess, in the education system, which is amazing. It's really cool, but that's not the only thing that you've done. Now, going back to when you were homeless, I feel like based on the things that we've talked about, that kind of catapulted you into what you're currently doing, which is an investor, right? You own homes, but you started by doing other things, by owning apartment buildings. Talk us through that, because for a lot of people, even owning a home is an impossibility, right? At least they feel that way. So talk us through that whole thing of how what your mindset was, how you started, why you started, what you did, what you accomplished, and then where you're at right now, because that's a long story in itself.
Okay, so in 2003, another life event, and
what was that?
My husband passed away.
Oh, okay. May he rest in peace.
Yes. So that right there took me at in a totally different scenario, because I had been used to having a support, something that I had relied on his protection, his stability, everything. So thank God that he had some life insurance for us. So, but when that happened, I wanted to make sure that I did not access those funds until I had a plan that would hopefully, keep the value of what was given to us, and also maybe possibly enhance it, or at least keep it,
Right.
Because I remember my Toyota Corolla days, and that right there is just something that it will never be out of my mind. So I started working. At that time, I had already sold my school, the trade school.
Okay.
And so I said, well, what can I do for now? What I can do is, again, I tapped into the skill I had, which was my limited English knowledge. And I went to a language school here locally. And I applied for an ESL instructor, and yes, I had. They gave me some hours there, and so that was that was my income. And then I was living in a very large home, and I started renting. I started the roommate situation with my colleagues there in the language school.
Oh wow!
Yes, I had 3 teachers from there.
I find it really interesting how these events that happened in your life have allowed you to, think creatively, think outside the box, and say, wow, I think I can use this to my advantage. So you're coming from a place where at one point you were homeless, then all of a sudden now you're renting rooms in a house, but that's just the beginning.
Yes.
Then
yes.
what happened?
And then, I started renting rooms in my house to complement my income, so I would not have to tap on the life insurance funds that were left for my 2 boys and myself. And then in 2007, my daughter was in law school at that time. She lived in Austin.
Right.
And then she told me that she had to move. She had to look for a house because where she was currently, the owner was going to sell. So they had, she had to really, really fast look for a house.
Right.
So I started helping her. I looked online and I did all my little Google research and all that. And I told her I found 2 homes. I want you to take a look at them and see the areas because it needed to be close to UT. That was one of the things that she said, Mom, I need to be close to UT.
Right.
She was in UT Law. So we found a house and I bought it with the life insurance proceeds. That's where it all began, really. And then my daughter and her roommate were my first tenants.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So
So
now
it worked out perfectly.
It did, because now I knew that I had the investment there. I had income from the investment, and then that would be my first rental income, aside from my roommates.
Right.
And then and then so I kind of ran my numbers and thought, well, this is maybe something that I want to venture in, real estate, and which I knew nothing about.
Right.
And then I started with 2 other homes here on the west side, and I started getting income. And then I got to the point where I didn't have to work anymore for the language.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Which by then I was manager. I forgot to mention that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was managing the school by then. And I wanted to get, more experience or more research in real estate because I really wanted to. I thought that was my area.
Right.
It felt good, So from there, so now I'm in the single family home rentals. And when they're all rented, it's all good. But then all of a sudden, all of a sudden I get some vacancies.
Right.
And that's where I said, whoa. In between tenants, it was 2 months, 3 months.
Right.
And I needed the income.
Right.
So I said, okay, I'm going to research which kind of investment is the one that has lower vacancy rates. So that's how I turned into the multifamily investment instead of the single family.
And we were talking about multifamily. You're not talking about like 2 or 3.
No. Well, I started with 6, and then I went to another 10, and then another 14, and blah 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 until I got to a certain amount.
Right.
Over 50, something like that.
Over 50?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like
how do you manage something like that?
Oh my God!
Because that's incredible,
it's
actually.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And I managed them along with 1 worker.
That's incredible.
Yes.
But you also refinished a lot of them too, right?
Yeah,
you
I
sunk
had
money
to.
into it.
Oh,
you said
had to.
I have to kind of build these up. And at some point when you ended up selling, you ended up making a good profit, right?
Yes, because I started buying multifamilies in 2010.
Okay, so not too long
around
ago.
2010, and then 2012, 2015, 2016. So I start, building a little bit of a multifamily portfolio there. And
then you get tired of that, and you end up getting rid of all of that.
Really, I didn't get tired.
Okay.
I was tired, but at the same time, I'm such a passionate person where I put my energy or my goals, I give it my 100%.
And that's, I think, the beautiful thing about all the conversations that we've had in the past 6 months is that you're always telling me that it's your passion that leads you to do all the things that you do. And one of the questions that I always have my guests answer or give us some insight is, what kind of advice do you have for our viewers that could help them in the future? It could be anything. Buying a house, it could be learning, it could be education, whatever. What kind of advice do you have?
It could be anything, like you just said. Everybody has a skill or an ability or a feature or some kind of, I don't know, talent. Every one of us. But
what do we do with that?
Well, we just make it grow, make it flourish. And that's going to be your, I think, that's going to be your, what leads your spirit, what leads your dream, you know, what takes you toward your dreams or toward your goals. Because if you want it, if it's your dream, like they say, you will never work a day in your life. You're just going to be enjoying yourself. So that's what I would tell everybody. And don't get discouraged, you know, don't get discouraged, because sometimes people will say, oh, you can't do that. What are you doing buying that building, that old building? You know, it's falling, my goodness.
But you see, you have the vision to see.
But I saw it, yeah.
You had the vision to see beyond that, you know. What will be the end result in this venture that I'm going through, right? And I think it is interesting that you mentioned that, because there are a lot of people that are naysayers, as they say, individuals that don't want you to succeed, or maybe it's not that they don't want you to succeed. Maybe it's just because they think that if they can't do it, then you can't do it either. But I'm glad that you mentioned that, because we're all able to achieve our goals to the best of our ability. And one of the most important things is to believe in what we're trying to do, right?
Yes.
I think it's really, really cool that you do all of these things. And I wanted to thank you that you took your time out to give us a little bit of insight as to who you are as an individual. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
I sure did. Thank you very much. And thanks for the program, which I think is great.
Oh, thank you very much. It's our pleasure to have you here. And I want to thank all of you guys for joining us once again. My name is Miguel Valenzuela. You're watching Creative Thinkers. And as always, we bring you as interesting people for you guys to learn from. If you guys have somebody interesting that you think that I might want to talk to, you guys can email me at mvalen31@epcc.edu. And we will see you guys next time. Thank you very much.